Hey there, guys, gals, and non-binary pals. Welcome to our Sunday service. We are streaming on 3 different mediums. We are coming at you on Zoom and Facebook and YouTube all at once. So wherever you are, welcome. If you are on Zoom with us, then hi. Consider staying afterwards for talkback. It's a chance for all of us to discuss the sermon and get a little socialization in there, which we all miss, I know. So consider staying for talkback. You will receive the link after the service is over in Zoom. So if you go to Facebook, you can also see former sermons and subscribe to get notifications when we put up new videos. This month we are exploring UUism. What is it? What do we believe? What do we do? What do we want? What is it all for? Today's sermon is the one where we talk about polity with Matt Pargeter-Villarreal. It has been so long since Matt has been up here. Hey Matt, I'm excited to hear your sermon. Missed you, man. In addition to Sunday services, we have other ways to connect with UUCOC, including Facebook, Instagram, the e-blast where you get your news, and our new YouTube channel. We are collecting quite a few best promos, and they're so fun. That frog. All right, Kenneth is almost done rebuilding our playground. Yay! But he needs help cleaning up the mess. So if you can help with cleanup, then please get in touch with Kenneth. I know he'd appreciate it. He did the building. We should do the cleanup, right? And to all of our wonderful volunteers, including Kenneth and all of you, the rest of you, us, please report your volunteer hours. If somebody could go in the chat right now and remind me to log these volunteer hours right now, because this counts too. If you're helping on the service, if you're doing any of this, it counts as volunteer hours, so log them in, because collecting this information helps in many ways, including for use in grant applications. Your hours can be turned into cash to fund church projects and operations. So we're talking new signs, new playgrounds, disco ball in the sanctuary, you know, stuff like that. In order to log these hours, you can go to oakcliffuu.org/talent. If you need an account, because you don't have one yet, go to oakcliffuu.org/login. Log in, get an account, talent, put it in there. You can also log your hours by going into Breeze. There's a little button in your profile. Log your volunteer hours. It's real easy. While you're on our page or in Breeze, go pledge your time and talent. We're a small church. We've got to help each other out, right? We've got to do these little things. We don't want to bother you about joining a committee you don't want to join, you know? So if you go into time and talent, you can tell us what you want to do. How do you want to be a part of this church? What do you want to do? And then they can, you know, use it. Also, in addition to time and talent, if you'd like to make a financial pledge to our church, you can go to oakcliffuu.org/donate. Use Amazon Smile if you are on Amazon. I Give if you are on anything else, and our new text to give option. I saw Emily the other day. She's like holding it up on. No, Emily likes it. If you're new here, welcome. We love having you here. We love spreading UUism. Wait, are we allowed to do that? I don't think we're allowed to spread UUism. I think we just, I don't know. Maybe Matt will tell us in the sermon. COVID, I don't know what I'm doing anymore. If you are new here, welcome. Please sign our guest book. We'd love to know that you were here. oakcliffeu.org/guest. And again, consider staying for Talkback. We'd love to see you, talk to you. Worship ministry still needs help putting together the service. If you can be a small cog in the machine, then get a hold of Jasmine. And if you want to do a sermon, same thing. Our next theme is based on UUA's Spirit and Practice series. If you're interested, contact Jasmine. If you want to know more information about the series and the curriculum, then we're going to do this again, okay? UUA.org/RE/tapestry/adults/practice. Or just Google UUA Spirit and Practice, and it's the very first thing that comes up on top. We have no member anniversaries, and the booty shaking llama is in the other room with the kids. And if I go get it, this is all just. So this is where we say goodbye. Unless you would like me to read Goodnight Moon or talk about Loki or, something like that. But barring that, happy Sunday, everybody.
Good morning, and thank you for joining the Unitarian Universalist Church of Oak Cliff's online service. We are an open, welcoming, and social justice-seeking church, and are so glad that each and every one of you are here today. Some of us are bringing our best selves to this space, and some of us are bringing our struggling selves. All of us are loved, all of us are cherished, and all of us are welcome here.
May the light we now kindle inspire us to use our powers to heal and not to harm, to help and not to hinder, to bless and not to curse, to serve you, Spirit of love, compassion, and forgiveness. And now in Spanish. Que esta luz que ahora encendemos nos inspire a usar nuestros dones y poderes para sanar y no para herir, para ayudar y no para impedir, para bendecir y no para maldecir, para servirte a ti, espíritu de amor, compasión y perdón.
This morning's opening words are The Heart of Our Faith by Monica Jacobson Tennyson. What is it that calls you here, that calls you onward, that calls you inward, that leads you homeward? What is it that gives you the power to make that change, to ask that question, to take that journey? What is it that says you have done well, that asks you to learn more, that brings you to stillness, that holds you up in hard times? It is relationship, the beating heart of our faith. It begins when we share this hour, our truths, this air, our hearts. Come, let us worship together.
Do that I go. Because we love one another, we honor each individual's spiritual journey. We celebrate life, abundance, and service to each other, our community, and the world. We connect with each other in love, respect, and acceptance. Thus do we covenant together.
And now in Spanish. Porque nos amamos uno al otro, honramos el viaje espiritual de cada individuo. Celebramos la abundancia de la vida en el servicio a entre sí, nuestra comunidad y el mundo. Ponemos en contacto a unos con otros en el amor, respeto y aceptación, así que hacemos pacto.
At this time in the service, we take time to share what is in our hearts and our minds. If your heart is heavy today, know that you do not have to carry your burden alone. Your heartache is a shared sorrow. A shared sorrow is a sorrow halved. Please share your sorrows publicly in the Zoom chat or send them to our Facebook Messenger or speak them aloud.
When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love.
We also share our joys with one another, knowing that joy comes into all our lives, knowing that joy calls unto joy, knowing that together our voices can rise in a chorus of celebration. Please share your joys publicly in the Zoom chat or send them to our Facebook Messenger or speak them aloud.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart of the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Polity. It's an unusual word. When you first hear it, you think that someone has made a mistake when they said it. You are thinking that they meant to say something else like policy or politics. Polity is not a word that most people have heard because it is a word that not many people find themselves using in day-to-day conversation. It is one of those words that only comes up if you hang around churches or other religious circles long enough. And even then, it is perhaps a stretch that you will hear it often. If you are any regular churchgoer, the word polity probably does not mean anything to you. As far as you know, you come to church, there is a service that usually lasts about an hour with a discussion portion afterwards. Then there is usually coffee in the fellowship hall and other religious groups or religious education classes in the afternoon that you may be interested in. And then you leave and return home. If you are a minister or someone who is on the board of trustees for a church, You are all too familiar with the word polity. You probably have one or two stories, or several, depending on how many years you've been in leadership, about what it means to you. What polity means is how a church or particular congregation comes together and organizes itself into a self-governing entity. Basically, in layperson's terms, how does a church do the work of being or functioning as a church? You are probably thinking to yourself at this point in the sermon, ew, gross. That sounds really complicated and political. And to a certain extent, you're absolutely right. You would be hard-pressed to find people that truly get excited talking about church polity. I mean, I'm sure there are some people out there. I was required to take several church polity classes during my time in seminary, and I will be the first to admit that they were definitely not my favorite classes. But, as unglamorous as talking about church polity may be, it is an important topic for us to discuss as Unitarian Universalists, because it is the story of how we come together as a church, and why we come together the way that we do is an important part of the story of what we believe as a faith tradition, and how we view ourselves as part of the greater community to which we belong. The earliest ancestors of the Unitarian Church in the United States were the Pilgrims of the Puritans, who left England in the early 17th century. They made the brave decision to risk their lives to sail across the Atlantic Ocean in ships to escape from religious persecution that they were facing from those in both the Church of England and the English Presbyterian Church. The Church of England was the state religion of the United Kingdom, with the monarch as the head of the church. The monarch, in this particular case King William III, divided the country into different regions and appointed bishops who were directly in charge of those regions. The bishops were the only ones who had the official say in appointing the ministers of the individual churches in their respective regions. It was not uncommon for these ministers to be close personal friends of the bishop, or those who had worked hard to earn the bishop's favor. It was also not uncommon for ministers to be appointed without any consideration for whether the congregation liked the minister or not, or whether or not the minister cared about the congregation at all. As far as the Church of England was concerned, whoever was the minister or the bishop was the one who held all the decision-making power and authority. No exceptions. The same was true for the English Presbyterian churches, except the minister was appointed by an assembly of elected elders called a presbytery that served as the decision-making body of the church and were the ones who held the power. The Pilgrims and Puritans rejected this hierarchical form of church governance. According to them, they believed that each local church was a full realization in miniature of the entire church, and that the local congregation and those who attended it were the individual representation of the church itself. This became known as congregational polity, where all of the members of the church had the right and responsibility to have a say in how the church was organized and conducted itself. Even if the church had a minister for preaching and conducting worship, the minister was prohibited from running the church by themselves. They had to get the approval of the congregation, which would often make its decisions by majority vote. In this respect, there was no hierarchy of power between the minister and the congregation. Both were equal in the eyes of the church. As egalitarian as this sounded, it was considered radical and even blasphemous by 17th century England, that was dominated by the Church of England and Presbyterian churches. Many Pilgrims and Puritans were persecuted, imprisoned, and executed by authorities who were threatened by the idea that all should have the right to decide how they formed their churches. For these reasons, they made the difficult voyage to the United States and set up communities in what is today the state of Massachusetts. Although they had established cities and towns where they could form their own churches, which came to be known as congregational churches for their polity structure, and Congregationalism became the established religion in New England, they were still in a British colony and still faced persecution from those back in England who tried to control the way that they wanted to organize, especially the English Presbyterians. So, over a period of 3 years, from 1645 to 1648, a group of ministers and lay delegates from 24 congregations in Massachusetts and 26 congregations in New England gathered together to discuss drafting some sort of official document that sought to guarantee the rights of the Congregationalists to organize their churches their way. From that series of gatherings came a document called Platform on Church Discipline, written by one of the delegates, Richard Mather. This document, regarded by many as the religious constitution of Massachusetts, came to be known as the Cambridge Platform. This document protected the right of congregational polity, defined by author Earl Holt as the form of church government in which each congregation is autonomous, self-governing, and a covenanted body. The individual church owns its properties, elects its own ministers and other church officers, and conducts all its own affairs. The Cambridge Platform protected the right of assembly of our Pilgrim and Puritan forebears who became Congregationalists. But it was also important for later groups of people who were also escaping England for America in search of religious tolerance and freedom from persecution. By the mid-17th century, there were an increasing number of people, especially ministers and theologians, who began to be labeled as nonconformists, or those that professed beliefs different from those recognized by the Church of England. A number of these ministers, men like Henry Hedworth and John Biddle, began to espouse radical views that denied the existence of the Trinity, and said that there was nothing in Scripture to support it. These believers became known as English Unitarians, and although they amassed a large following among the people, they were seen as a threat to English society and became subject to a series of laws that were enacted by Parliament. These laws included the 1689 Act of Toleration, which, despite its name, punished those who professed non-Trinitarian beliefs and prevented them from holding political office and becoming university professors. The 1697 Blasphemy Act went even further. It prevented non-Trinitarians and Unitarians from owning property and risked them facing 3 years imprisonment without bail. Because of the increasing hostility towards them in England, and hearing of the religious freedom that was afforded to those in New England, many English Unitarians left Europe and joined the emerging new communities that they found there. As new communities began to be formed in Massachusetts and other parts of New England, many soon found that building one congregational church for the community was not easy, because there were many people who had come from England that were seeking all different kinds of religious freedom. The first step in coming together to decide what kind of church to establish meant coming together to get to know each other as townspeople and what they were seeking in a church. Many communities in Massachusetts began having neighborhood meetings. As one member of the community in Dedham, Massachusetts put it, quote, lovingly to discourse and consult together and prepare for spiritual communion in a church society that we might be acquainted with the spiritual tempers and gifts of one another. Free to come together congregationally as a result of the freedoms enacted by the Cambridge Platform, many of these congregational meetings to establish church began not with discussions about theology or scripture, but of how to come together as a free and just civil society. Having all had to flee their home country due to varying degrees of religious persecution, their primary concern was creating more than a church. It was creating a society that gave them freedom and protected their rights. Even though they came from different religious persuasions, they agreed that justice and freedom were important to forming the society that would also form their churches. As they continued their discussions, justice and freedom soon developed into compassion for one another as people, which developed into acting and relating to one another in a spirit of love, which became reflected in the final motto of the Dedham congregation. Members of this new free church should be joined in a covenant of religious loyalty to the spirit of love. The members put this new statement into writing, and it served as the free covenant by which all of them agreed to abide, something which the congregation had come together to decide for themselves without coercion or influence from anyone else. For many of us as Unitarian Universalists, the statement of the Dedham Church became the origin of the phrase, "Love is the doctrine of this church," that we say as the first line of our affirmation statement. It is this free association and mutual dialogue that has been born out of the establishment of congregational polity that has come to define us as a faith tradition. Even though we come from different backgrounds, different faith persuasions, different ways of thinking, we are able to come together as individuals and decide for ourselves what our churches will be and what they will look like. Even though we have a greater Unitarian Universalist association that oversees some of the common aspects and functions of our denomination as a whole, it is the members of each UU congregation that are responsible for and decide the design of their own church. We all share a common set of 7 principles and 6 sources that we agree on, but no UU congregation will be the same as another, just as we as UUs are different and unique from each other. It is why we continue to attract so many seekers that come from other traditions. We offer them a community in which they are free to be themselves, just as we were once looking for the same thing. It is the spirit of congregational polity that helped to lead to the spread and development of Unitarian and Universalist congregations across the country, outside of their historical home in New England. Between 1948 and 1961, the American Unitarian Association engaged in a process to actively create smaller lay-led fellowships of groups of 10 people or more, both the Midwest and the Southern United States. This was meant to coincide with 2 major events that were taking place in the 1950s. The number of ex-soldiers that were taking advantage of the GI Bill and going to college, and the post-war baby boom. The results were young, educated, new families that were moving out into suburbia and looking for the ideal environment in which to raise their children. The fellowship movement allowed groups of families to receive information through the mail from the AUA that allowed them to form their own congregations that became more interested in involving themselves with civic and community engagement, or studying the great books as opposed to the Bible, or exploring humanist philosophy, or getting involved with social justice causes of the day like feminism or civil rights. Whatever kind of congregation these families wanted to form, the AUA gave them the opportunity to write their own covenants and form their own fellowships, many of which grew over time into some of the UU churches that we have today. We cannot understand and appreciate the diversity in our congregations without understanding that it is our unique polity that has helped to bring it about. Polity may not be the most interesting topic in the world to talk about, but it is something that we have fought for over the course of our history. It is the right for no one but us to be able to tell us what to believe and how to do church that has come to define us as a community of faith. It is a legacy that we share with our siblings in many different faiths, from Quaker meetings to Jewish synagogues, to Sikh gurdwaras, to Islamic mosques. It is our right to create the church that we want, one that is different from any other. It is the reason that we include as our 5th principle the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and within our society at large. So, the next time you are at church and you hear an announcement about the next board meeting being held in the sanctuary after the service, and you are invited to attend, as many UU churches will let you do, I invite you to accept the invitation and attend a board meeting sometime. And as you are sitting there, listening to the discussions that are taking place. Know that you are witnessing something truly special, something which has been years in the making, and which is responsible for creating the very UU congregation that you are at today. May it be so. Blessed be. Amen. Shalom. Assalamu alaikum. Namaste. Thank you all so much.
Sunshine goes everywhere. Its temple space, its shrine, the good heart, its creed, all truth, its ritual works of love. Be ours a religion which, like sunshine, goes everywhere. Its temple space, its shrine, the good heart, its creed, all truth, its ritual works of love. Be ours a religion which, like sunshine, goes everywhere. Its temple, all space, its shrine, the good heart, its creed, all truth, its ritual works of love.
Let there be an offering to sustain and strengthen this place, which is sacred to so many of us, a community of memory and hope, for we are now the keepers of the dream. To make an offering or your pledge, please go to oakcliffuu.org/donate and follow the links.
From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live. De ti yo recibo, a ti te doy. Así compartimos y vivimos hoy. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live. De ti yo recibo, a ti te doy. Así compartimos y vivimos hoy.
We All Have Two Religions by William E. Gardner. We all have two religions, the religion we talk about and the religion we live. It is our task to make the difference between the two as small as possible.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And now in Spanish. Extinguimos esta llama, pero no la luz de la verdad, el calor de comunidad o el fuego de nuestro compromiso. Estos los llevaremos en el corazón hasta que estemos juntos otra vez. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May kindness. May I be well, may I be peaceful and at ease. May I be whole, may you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well, may you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well, may you be peaceful and at ease. May you be whole, may we be filled with loving